Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of From Page to Stage. I'm your host, Wendy Corner, and this podcast is for you if you are an entrepreneur. Yes, page, stage come together in entrepreneurship. Now, you may be thinking, page? Well, maybe you've got a solo book out. Maybe you've got a contributory book out. Maybe you've got regular blogs. But if you are an entrepreneur, you've got socials out, haven't you? And what's that if it's not published work? Tick that box. But what about this stage thing? Well, you may be thinking, I'm a little, I don't want to do public speaking. I can't do public speaking. And my question is, what's your definition of a stage? Because if you can have a one-on-one conversation with someone, you can do a podcast like we're doing now. It's a one-on-one conversation. There are other people listening in. But the point is, you can do it. So if you've got a business, why aren't you talking on podcasts? Come and join us. Get your message out. Page to stage. Okay, that's about the podcast. Now, oh my goodness me, am I thrilled to be speaking to Krystal Hille today. Krystal and I go back a few years. We've worked together, and she was on the original podcast launch party, which, as I've just said to her off camera as we're recording this, it's tomorrow. So this is really precious to have one of our OGs, if you like, back on the stage. Why have I got her back? Well, I'm going to let Krystal tell you a bit more about her. Krystal, give us a quick synopsis of how you got to where you are today, would you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Wendy. I'm so excited that I'm back for the anniversary. That is just beautiful. So my journey actually began as a theatre director, my professional journey, where I was helping people or actors give their best performance on stage. And I had this ability always to bring their unique essence out in the character. So that was something that somehow I had a talent for. You know, when you have a talent and you don't even know you have it, and then somebody tells you, it's like, oh, really? Oh, I thought everybody did that. So that was me with actors. That door closed and I moved into theatre. I moved into life coaching because I'd always known I really want to help people. I'm here to help people. And as a teenager, I didn't quite know what that looked like. But finally, in my 30s, here I was helping women in particular live their best story and rewrite their story to live their best story. And then fast forward 13 years or so, COVID happened, that door closed because I was really mainly doing events by that stage. And that door closed. I also went through a rather difficult divorce and did not want to be holding space for other people's problems, or wasn't capable for that. And having been in 2 multi-author books at the time, the opportunity just arose to learn about publishing and become a hybrid publisher. And so at first, I was very confused. Like, how am I helping people here? Like, how am I empowering entrepreneurs or people? And as I was doing it more and more and more, I realized how when we write a book and we have the discipline to reflect on our life, we realize how far we come and we celebrate our lives in a way that then gives us confidence that we can really back ourselves, and a certainty in which we can show up as an entrepreneur that is really second to none. So I've really loved that journey of helping authors or entrepreneurs and coaches and healers to share their stories, initially in multi-author books and more so now in solo books. And one thing I've realized is that, well, 81% of people want to write a book and only 1% get published. So what's happening in the gap, right? And I've noticed it with my authors as well. They start off really enthusiastically, and then life happens, things get in the way, and a year later, we still haven't published their book. And I was like, what is going on? How can I help them to overcome the inner battles that are going on even more powerfully? And that's what I've written a book about.
So this is your first solo work, isn't it?
It's my first solo work in my current like I've reinvented, as I've just shared, reinvented myself so many times. So there have been two books on Amazon which I've taken down. So strictly speaking, it isn't, but it feels like it. Like
Right.
it feels like this is my first business book. This is my first book that I'm bringing out as a publisher. It's my
Mhm.
first book that I'm doing a proper book launch for. So it feels like it's my first book. It really does.
Oh, congratulations on your incoming baby. Oh.
I know, thank you.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. It's called The Aligned Author, a
Okay.
writer's odyssey towards momentum and mastery.
Ooh, that's an interesting title.
Mm.
Yeah.
What does it remind you of? Actually, I'm curious. Like when you hear that title, what does it tell you about the book?
Well, the Odyssey takes me back to school days and Ovid and all that wonderful jazz. It tells me there's a journey. It tells me this is not a straight line. It tells me this is some epic adventure on the way, which I'm kind of guessing is where you're going with this. Am I right?
You are exactly right. And I'm so happy that that came out in that title because it is what I've done is, as you know, in storytelling and all the big movies, they're all basing their storyline on the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell. You know, there's 12 phases of it. And I realized that writing a book is a hero's journey all on its own in itself. And so my through line and my chapters are based around the hero's journey, where we begin by living in the ordinary world, just being an entrepreneur, doing our thing, and suddenly we get this call, you should write a book. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay. And a lot of people think, oh, yeah, I'll do that later. Oh, I don't have time right now. Who am I to write a book? You know, all of those things. And that is the second stage, the refusal of the call. So
Mhm.
I'm investigating and looking at, well, why do we refuse the call? Why don't we just say yes? Why do 81% of people want to write a book and only 1% publish? So we're
Mhm.
exploring that. And then we're going, once you finally say yes, all right, I'll do it, because you get the clarity. And again, I share how you get the clarity, what questions to ask. Um, Once you have the clarity and you say yes, then it's about, okay, now we are crossing the threshold and we need a mentor. That's the third stage, you know, the meeting of the mentor, and how a mentor can speed up the process enormously, because they can give you the recipe so you don't have to just trial and error and try things out, but you have a proven roadmap to go on. And then we come into the trial, the tests, meeting the enemies and the allies. And of course, I focus on what's going on between the, in the head.
Mhm.
Why are we overwhelmed? Why do we need, what is this thing about perfectionism? Why do we procrastinate? And I actually look at it through the lens of the attachment styles,
Okay.
really looking into why an anxious, and perfectionism plays itself out in many different ways for depending on what attachment style you are. For an anxious attachment style, they need approval, because they've had this love hate, like been given love, then they've been criticized. It's been withdrawn. It's been there, it's been withdrawn as a child and highly criticized. So they're craving this need for connection and this need for approval in an overdeveloped way that is not healthy. That's coming from a need that's based in insecurity. So if you're a writer with that, you can imagine why you would feel incredibly vulnerable to actually even put pen to paper, right? Because it has to be perfect. Then
Mhm.
we go to the avoidant attachment style. Those are the people who in childhood, they had parents who couldn't show love, didn't know how to show love, were emotionally unavailable. So those people had to learn how to look after themselves, emotionally soothe themselves. They value independence over vulnerability. And so suddenly you ask them to write a story about their life. That's very scary. And we talked about that off camera beforehand, right? How scary it is to open yourself up to that. So hide behind research. Oh, I just got to, or even the refusal of the call would be, oh, I'm not qualified enough. That's the avoidant attachment style. And so it's to say, no, I am exactly good enough the way I am right now. And all I have to do is write. People don't want your perfect persona. They want to feel you, right?
Yeah. If
And
you're
then
way up here, then you're too far for me to even relate.
Exactly. And then the disorganized attachment style, they've often come from a little bit more of an abusive background where there's a lot of love and then there's abuse. There's love, there's abuse. And so they have that, they want to have it, but they also have a fear of connection and closeness. And so in writing, that expresses itself in bursts of creativity and output, and then shut down, withdrawal, procrastination, can't do it. And there's this tug of war back and forth. And so when we understand who we are and what we can heal, it becomes a lot easier to then actually, deal with the so-called writer's blocks, which actually are just deep fears of being seen and backing who we truly are. And that's why this author journey is such a powerful transformational journey. And I feel like it's not just the writing, but it's the putting it out there. This thing that I'm about to do right now, it's often the scariest. Am I ready to be visible? That journey is really, really powerful. Once we overcome that, we come back with the elixir, with a book that's published, with who we've become in the process, which is like the embodied expert, because now we're fully claiming our message and our mission.
It's a journey on two levels, isn't it? Because not only are you writing about the stuff that you've been through, because I'm suspecting that your authors, you're aiming for authors who have had a mess that's translated into their message. Most entrepreneurs have been through something that they've gone, something's missing in the marketplace here. I'm ideally placed to create a product, a service to do that. So you've got that level, but you've also got the development of the person themselves. So it's not just how they developed their product or their service, but it's that as you say, the transformational journey, the catharsis of looking at the crappy bit that I didn't really want to go through, but oh me, that's actually what I'm producing as a result. I had to go through that before I could serve the world. Yeah, it's very powerful, isn't it? Having that two-pronged.
It's the message and then who you're becoming as you're writing the message. Yes.
Yeah. Ooh, goosebump moment. Goosebump moment. And we were saying off camera that you have had lots of experience of being a publisher, but this is really the first time that you are putting yourself in that seriously vulnerable spot.
Yes, it is. And I've noticed how I think it's not been as straightforward as I thought. Writing the book was easy, but I was like, ooh, there was sudden, and I've noticed that I prioritize business things over, let me just get some beta readers was easy, but let me just get some reviews, or let me get people who can endorse the product. That was the thing that I procrastinated on. I'm like, oh wow, isn't that interesting? I'm doing the same thing that my authors are doing, and now I have to hold myself accountable, and I have to do some digging as to what's the worst thing that can happen. It will not speak to everyone. Not everyone will need it, and that's fine. But the people who do need it, and this was my self-talk to myself that I give my authors, right?
Yes.
The people who do need it will find it. And that's who I wrote it for.
Oh, goosey moments. Lovely, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so now this is the book that is coming out on
the 28th of April.
28th of April 2025, because this podcast will be up forever after. Let's just put the date on it. Okay, so you're having a launch party. Audience, we're recording this on the 7th of April. I'm just putting the date stamp on it for you, because if you have a launch coming up, I was fortunate enough that my schedule had a no-show so that I could slot Krystal in for this. If you have a book launch coming up, and podcasts, I trust, is in part of your marketing strategy, don't leave it to the last minute.
Yeah, don't do what I did.
Just putting you under the bus here, Krystal. The point is that most of the people that I'm recording, I mean, I recorded another one before Krystal's today. That's not going out until June. So very often podcasters have a lag time. Krystal was fortunate in that I could shuggle things about. But what I'm saying to you is, if you've got something coming up, think well ahead of time. Part of your marketing strategy, I'm going to invite you to think about podcasts. Where does your audience hang out? How can you maximize the launch of either your book, or maybe even you've got a program coming up? How can you maximize it to fit in with marketing? Just a little aside there, audience. Okay, sorry to put you on.
Yeah, so it means at least 3 months before the book comes out or the launch is happening, you need to reach out to your podcast host at least, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry to put you under the bus on there. Okay. So
I mean, it's perfect though, right? Because we all teach what we need to learn. And if I can be an example for somebody saying, hey, it even happens to me and I'm the publisher, I should know, then I'm happy. And that's me being vulnerable. And I think that's what it's all about, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I did something similar when I did a talk in Cambridge last year. I didn't rehearse well enough and froze on stage. I now know, well, I knew at the time that I should have. Would have been sensible too. Hey, refusal and all that wonderful hero's journey. Okay, so this is the book that's come out. Now, we've heard about how you got to your writing phase. Tell us a bit more about your speaking journey, would you?
I actually started my speaking journey when I was training as a life coach, because part of that was a trainer's training on how to learn how to speak. So I went through all of that and I absolutely loved it, and even had a mini excursion, yeah, I guess you could call it that, into teaching people public speaking from the embodiment background because of my theater background. So what I found was missing in the training that I had gone through was voice production, breathing, stage presence in a more authentic way, rather than just using the satir categories of, doing this, and whatever,
Yeah.
So I felt like there needed to be something a little bit more authentic. And so that's what I was focusing on. But again, it was me helping others rather than me being the one speaking. So since then, and since, I've been on so many podcasts sharing my message, and yeah, speaking on summits to this message, and I feel like I want to do even more. Like a podcast is on the list, and I know more YouTube appearances and my own videos are all part of this, knowing that speaking is so important because we can communicate our essence, right? It's the written word is one thing, but when you can see somebody, you can feel them and you can know, oh yeah, I resonate not just with her words, but I resonate with her essence and her energy.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, audience, think about it. If I mentioned the name Virgin to you, what is your immediate reaction? You're taken to Richard Branson, aren't you? Regardless of whether he's involved with that label, that particular company or not, he is the face, the voice of Virgin. And that's how he has grown into a multi-billion dollar persona, because he talks, he shares, and he's not a rah guy, is he? He does him. So if you are in the thoughts of, I can't do public speaking because I'm not like Tony Robbins, good. He does him, you do you. My point is, as picking up on what Krystal was saying, people know, like, and trust somebody through meeting them. In this day and age, we have the opportunity to meet somebody virtually. And if you've ever been on a summit or you've ever seen somebody speaking and they're as interesting as white plastic bread, then you want to scroll past. You don't want to do work with them, do you? You want to work with somebody who embodies, as Krystal was saying, embodies their message, is passionate about what they do, because they can bring that out in you. Love it, love it.
So good. Yeah, exactly. When we embody our message, we can bring that out in somebody else, right? Because we live it and we breathe it, and people can feel that passion and the care that we have for helping others to shine in our area of expertise.
Yeah.
You know, in your case, it's the speaking, and in my case, it's like, let's bring your story out, let's put it on the page so that you can be the thought leader and the expert that you're meant to be. And of course, then also using speaking to bring that to life. Like, I now have a framework that I didn't have before writing this book about the hero's journey, the author's journey. I now have a framework that I can talk about. This is now my content, my content, my signature methodology that I have. I didn't have that before writing the book. So very often I find that people say, well, what's my intellectual property? Like, I haven't created a framework. You don't have to have created a framework, because you do it as you're mapping out the structure of the book. And that's what I love helping people with.
More goosey moments. I love it when I have these chills. What you were saying then about the mapping things out, isn't it? That and you mentioned this earlier on, you weren't aware of the skills that you had. One of the sayings that I often come up with is, what's common sense to you is rocket science to somebody else. So the things that come naturally to you as an author, as an entrepreneur, you go, well, everybody knows that already. And they don't. Seriously, they don't. So if you can, under Krystal's guidance, get things down in a way that makes sense to your ideal audience. So if you are into quantum physics and you want to talk about things at that high level, and your audience is high school graduates, can I suggest that the language needs to be changed a bit? Speak to your audience, not to you, would be what I'd say with that. And then, as Krystal says, you can get that feel of somebody. They get me. Oh, yeah, beautiful, beautiful. This book is coming out in April. So excited with you. Have you got anything else percolating? Any more personal books?
Well, I think after the book, I have revamped what used to be called the Solo Book Incubator, which was a 4-month group program for people to plan and write their book. So now, of course, based on all of this content that I have put into the book, I have revamped it and renamed it, and it's now called the Aligned Author Sanctuary. So same thing, 4 months, but we're focusing not just on how do I structure my book and my outline, how do I write an intro, how do I write a chapter, how do I structure it, and getting feedback and accountability, but also really focusing on this hero's journey and the mindset, and bringing all of that into that journey, which I think is going to make it very beautiful and very deep.
And as you, the title Sanctuary gives the feel, I love the way that words help you to feel things, gives you that feeling of security, of safety. So as you are opening up in this vulnerable space, you are literally holding a ring of security around that person, that author.
Right.
Oh,
helping them through all of their wobbles so they don't procrastinate and ever shut the door, but they keep that momentum going.
Yeah. You're almost coming up to the record of goosey moments, I have to tell you.
It was 5. I think I counted 5. Have I?
Not quite there
Not
yet.
quite.
There's somebody who was a mega goosey one, but okay. But we're not competing.
I'm going to have one more nugget that I would love to share with everyone when it comes to, for those of you who are really feeling, oh, I know I need to write a book in order to be seen as the expert in my field, but what do I possibly write about? And this was exactly me. I was like, okay, I've been publishing for 3 years now. Why would I write another book about publishing? They're already out there. Why would I write another book about writing a book? They're already out there. So what on earth am I going to write about? And it took me a minute, but the way I found my topic was looking at, okay, what's the problem that I see my clients face? Secondly, what's my background and what do I bring to the table prior to the publishing, which was the coaching and my interest in people and figuring out why humans do what they do, which is what I've been studying for over 25 years, really. And so then I thought, okay, that's it. Bringing all of the different areas of your expertise together, all these puzzle pieces that make you uniquely you. That's how you find your title and your topic.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I mean, you come from the speaking side of it, from the theatre perspective. I come at it from the clinical perspective, from being a speech pathologist for almost 30 years. So yeah, there's so many extra things that we can do, and particularly the clinical work I was doing when I was working with people who are non-verbal. So how did you communicate with them? So much of it was through eyes, so much of it was through presence, as well as the gestures. So yeah, it's pulling all of your skills, and that often takes an outsider to point them out. Because one of my other favorite sayings is you can't read the label from inside the bottle. So when you get to know, if you have a coach, a book coach, an author coach, a speaking coach, you get the opportunity of working with somebody who goes, you're missing the point here. That skill that you have there, which you take for granted because it's part of you, is something that other people look up to. They want to know how to do it. Oh, juicy moments right, left and center here. Audience, you can tell that Krystal and I have worked together actually on a book project. She was the publisher for the MAD book, which is Making a Difference, Ways to Magnify Abundance, Vitality and Freedom, which I curated along with Krystal and a very good colleague of ours, Jenny Baz, which happened to be my second international best-selling contributory book. I now have 3 out. And I'm putting my first solo work out this year as well. So
hopefully you'll make that a bestseller too. And I can't wait to have a conversation about that one.
I'm excited. Yes. Okay, thank you, Krystal. So we've talked about your writing journey, and I happen to know anybody who hasn't already seen the first episode with Krystal, go back and check it out. It came out on the 8th of April 2024. Just saying, go back and have a check at it. So Krystal, we've spoken about your writing journey, your speaking journey, this wonderful book of yours, which is coming out imminently, and this brilliant program that you've got on the back of this. As we're winding up, and you've shared with us how you embody your words, because you are living them. And it's that vulnerability piece at the moment that you are showing off, that you actually understand where authors are coming from. You mean know yourself. And it is one of those, gird your loins, you can do this. As we're winding up, have you got any final words of wisdom for us?
There's a Les Brown quote that comes to mind, and I'll have to paraphrase, but he says that the graveyard is the richest place on earth because it holds in it all the unlived dreams and hopes and unwritten books and unsung songs of all the people. So I think this importance of seizing the moment and doing things now when the whispers are there and acting on what may seem irrational or illogical, and not letting life get in the way of that alignment that your soul is trying to move you into, I think is really, really important, because we don't want to say, oh, I'll do it someday, because we all know that someday never comes. And just like there's no right way or no perfect time to have children, there's no perfect time to write a book, ever. So do it now.
And tomorrow is not a given. So
No.
yeah, do it now. Oh, Krystal, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your next From Page to Stage. From us. Bye for now.
Bye.